Hey, girlfriends, it's me, Lauren Hope, aka Lola of Good Girl Chronicles, blogger, motivational speaker, certified peer recovery specialist, dog mom, lover of Dwayne Johnson, and all around fabulous. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I am a goody two shoes who chronicles her life. I talk about love, sex, relationships, mental health, and everything in between. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. And thank you. We just hit 500 subscribers earlier this month, and something I never ever thought would happen on this channel. So thank you. I will give you an update on life because it's been 2 weeks since I've vlogged. But first, I want to share with you something that people ask me all the time because I'm a mental health advocate and I'm always talking about therapy. So people say, how did you find your therapist? So I'm going to give some of my own personal tips as well as some tips from Mental Health America, which is a nonprofit dedicated to mental illness and mental wellness in America. It's amazing the resources you can find on Mental Health America. And so I have been with my therapist for 2 years. So before I get into giving you some tips, I want to talk to you about my journey with therapy. I first went to see a therapist when I was about 17. That's when I started having anxiety attacks. I would get these shooting pains in my chest. I felt like somebody was suffocating me, and I'd have this ball in my throat, and I didn't know what was causing that. And we went to the doctor, and he said, "I think that your daughter might have anxiety." So that's when I was put on an anxiety medication when I was about 17. There were a lot of environmental factors happening also. My parents were going through a really nasty divorce, and it was really affecting the family in really hard ways. I had to step up in responsibility and taking care of my siblings. I just was so upset that everything I discovered in my parents' divorce and all of that, it was really hard. And so I think that really sparked a lot of my anxiety. And then I started to struggle with depression. The first time I struggled with suicidal ideation probably was when I was about 17. I started having these intense thoughts about death, intense thoughts. And let me pause for a second and just say, if you're watching this and you are in crisis and you need help, please call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-TALK. They open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there is a licensed counselor there to support you. You can also call the crisis text line, 741-741, and text them to get support. So I started having these preoccupations with death, just thinking about ways to die, thinking about my funeral, and it really freaked me out. And I told my mom about it, and that's when my mom found a therapist for me. And my first therapy experience was actually really good. At that point in my life, there were so many things happening where I didn't feel heard, like with my parents going through their issues, with about to graduate high school and not knowing what I was going to do next. So it felt good to have somebody to process that with. Here's the hard part though. We had family issues, intense family issues. And I kind of resented the fact that I was the only one going to therapy. I think my parents actually went to marital counseling or whatever, but they never shared that. So, I was 17 and there was just all of these things happening in the house. I was the only one going to therapy, to my knowledge. And I felt bitter about that. It made me feel like something was wrong with me, that I had to go to this person to talk about these issues and everybody else is just kind of whatever. Also, when you go to therapy, there are lessons that you get from the therapist, to help you process things or whatever. So I'm going in there processing this and trying to make the change in my life, but nobody else is changing. So that was really tough. I've had a therapist off and on since then, in my mid-20s, when I was a television reporter and I was struggling with depression. I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder then. And I was in the height of my television career. I had a therapist then. And it's interesting, my therapist was talking to me about being a television reporter and how that can be really traumatic. As a reporter, you're seeing trauma all the time. You're the first one to go to scenes, the last one to leave. You see people on the best and worst days of their life. And I underestimated that trauma. I underestimated it. Nobody in the newsroom was talking about feelings of sadness or the things that they saw, like mental health and therapy was not talked about in the newsroom. I vaguely remember someone talking about the Employee Assistance Program, EAP, which is something that almost every employer I think has, which allows people to get free counseling or like counseling at a deep discount for their employees. So, but it's not like, I don't know, that number wasn't readily available. Like it's not during the HR procedure like that was emphasized. So I really didn't know how to cope with what I was handling. And the culture around news, when I was in news, it might still be that way. The culture around news was you eat, sleep, and breathe news. That's how you're going to get ahead. You're the first one to leave, the first one to get to the station, the last one to leave. You see a traumatic scene and you pick yourself up and you get right back. Like there's no debriefing. Like there were sometimes I would go to crime scenes and see people dead, like on the side of the road. Now think about this. I'm responding to that scene. A police officer is responding to that scene. A firefighter is responding to that scene. And when there are really stressful, traumatic scenes, usually the first responders have like a debriefing plan, or they're off for a day, or counselors come in. There's nothing like that for reporters. Nothing like that. So I have to be at that same traumatic scene with those people, right? I often, we don't see everything they see, but it's still traumatic. Then the next day, I have to go try to get that person's loved ones or friends or whatever to talk about what wonderful people they are and how their lives were taken too soon. I always think about this story in Newport News. I live in Hampton Roads, Virginia. I'm gonna try not to cry when I say this. I don't know why this particular story stuck with me so intensely. It was in a Newport News project, and a woman was sitting outside, a single mother of like 2 children, sitting outside, minding her business with her kids, and she was shot and killed by a stray bullet. And when we got to the scene, I just remember seeing a white blanket over this body and thinking, oh my gosh, she was really young. And just thinking, oh my gosh, like she did not deserve this. She did not deserve this. And but like in those moments, like you feel that, but you can't get stuck in it because then you can't do your job. So so we got the story, and then the next day I think it was a Saturday. We were trying to get the closest family member, and I felt so voyeuristic. These people had literally just lost their daughter like the day before, and we're scouting out where the mom is, the boyfriend, the whatever. And there was a competing reporter there, and we were like staking out this project where she died and looking to see if there was any friends or anybody that we could get. And I remember seeing the competing reporter leave, and I'm like, oh my gosh, they must have something. And we followed them and went to the mother's house, and it was just, he had already caught her off guard in front of her at her house, like, and interviewed her. And so then I'm like, crap, I have to go do the same thing, because like it's gonna suck if we both go on air at 11 and I don't have that. And so I went up to her, and she was bawling, just bawling. And I think I maybe got 1 or 2 sound bites from her, but I just remember feeling her grief and feeling so bad that like my job required me to be in her face at the hardest moment of her life. And there were so many scenes like that. Teen boys, teenagers who were shot and killed, a young man who drowned at the ocean front, and we saw him pull out his body and at the beach. So sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but my therapist would say, you're experiencing trauma at your job, and you don't give yourself a break from that trauma, and you need to be extra conscious of it because you deal with depression. So you'll go and do all of these stories that tug at you. Then you'll go home, you'll rewatch it, you'll like watch everybody else's stories. And I just didn't listen. I had my heart set on being on Good Morning America. And I thought that this is what it was going to take. And in the process, I didn't realize that I was really unhealthy. I was working out really intensely. I wasn't eating. Yeah. In hindsight, I just look back and I just see that like I was slowly spiraling. But I was in therapy before, while I was at the station, and then I think I switched therapists, and I had some issues with that therapist. Um, and then I attempted to take my own life in May of 2014. Um, and then I was just numb, and I should have been in therapy then. Like, I went to a psychiatric facility. I'll be very honest about that, because that's that's not an easy thing for me to say, but I want to own my experiences, and I want to accept my diagnosis and those experiences. And I know that I am not the only person that's experienced that. So that's why I say that. After being at the psychiatric hospital, I just I don't know. I just wish I would have stayed in an intensive outpatient or inpatient program and really worked on my recovery. So sorry, I'm taking you down a rabbit hole. That's not what I meant to talk about today. Finding a therapist. So it is important that you find a therapist that works for you, and that looks different for everybody. I've had some therapists who I felt like I just didn't connect with, and it did not work. I didn't feel like I was growing or progressing. And so the therapist I have now is a Christian therapist. I actually met her at a Christian therapy office, and then she branched off to her own office. And I've been with her for 2 years, and this is the therapist that I have been the most honest and vulnerable with. And I can see growth from it. It was important to me to have a Christian therapist, because spirituality plays such a big role in my recovery, how I see the world, things like that. There are some people who want therapists that are their same color, or therapists that are their same gender. So I would advise to do some research about the type of therapist that you want. There are so many types of therapy. I'm in talk therapy, or cognitive behavioral therapy, where I go and I talk about my problems, and we process them together. And but there is EMDR therapy. There are therapists that are like experienced with trauma, or different type of experiences. So I say research therapist, like type of therapist out there. There are 2 resources I want to give you for how you can search for therapists. There is a website called psychologytoday.com, psychologytoday.com. It's a magazine, but they actually have a part of psychologytoday.com where you can go and search for therapists and support groups in your area. A lot of them are low cost, and they'll tell you what they specialize in. The Mental Health America also suggests going to a website called Help Pro. And then really researching and calling a couple of therapists, like 3 or 4, asking if they're taking new patients, ask if they take your insurance, and if they don't, do they have a sliding scale, or do they adjust for people's income? I have Medicaid right now, and my therapist doesn't take Medicaid, but she does sliding scale appointments. So it's based on my income. So that's the first thing. Search for therapists in your area. Look at their specialties and things like that. Mental Health America recommends asking around, like asking your friends, like if they have a therapist that like they recommend. I don't know if I want to go to the same therapist that my friend went to, but like, let's say like I once was at a Christian therapy office, and like I had a great experience. Maybe there are other therapists in that office that works, because therapy is a big part of my life. And also when I go, it's private. So there was this one time I went to the therapy office, and there was a client in the office where I went. And I don't know, I just didn't like it. Like somebody that I worked with was in the therapy office. I don't know. That's weird. Silly. Anyways, another suggestion is there is now online therapy, because of just how our lives are changing. There are ways to have telepsychiatry, and there are 2 companies that do this. They do online therapy called BetterHelp, and Talkspace. And these are licensed therapists that you can meet with online through a computer screen, just like this. I actually, before the office closed for my psychiatrist, I saw my psychiatrist through a television screen, telepsychiatric. I would go to the office, and then I would go in a room, and they plug up the TV, and I'd see her, and she'd see me. I think she actually lives in Charlottesville, but it's just a way for people to get services where there aren't services in their area. One of the things that I've learned that being a mental health advocate, there are a shortage of like psychologists and therapists. So telepsychiatry helps. Maybe there's a therapist out in Colorado or something like that that can be your psychiatrist virtually. So BetterHelp.com and Talkspace are online therapy programs you can go through, and they're pretty inexpensive. And then it says, after you make an appointment, this is a suggestion from Mental Health America. It says, make a list of 3 to 5 potential therapists. Start by making some phone calls. Some therapists will have a way for you to make an appointment online. Let the receptionist know that you're a new client and make sure they are covered under your insurance. Like I said, ask if they cover your insurance. If they don't, ask if they have a sliding scale. Some therapists will even do a consultation over the phone to make sure you're a good fit with them. Another thing I highly suggest people that I don't think enough people know about, insurance companies have to cover mental health services like physical health services. It was something that was passed into legislation a couple of years ago. So I'm going in my wallet to get my Medicaid health card. Is this it? Okay, well, this is one of them. Basically, I want to tell you to look on the back of your insurance card and call the numbers back there. Not enough people do this, I've learned. But I've learned by being a peer specialist, like to look up, to call the people that, the insurance people, and ask what my benefits are, ask who's in my network, that kind of thing. Girl, where is that thing? I think I always put it somewhere I can find it. Peanut butter jelly. I'm so sorry. Where is it? Oh my God. Oh, sugar snaps. Here it is. Boom, shakalaka. So, so this is the back of my insurance card. There's no personal information on there, but on the back of the insurance card, it has the member services number, provider services number, behavioral health, transportation, things like that. So if you're looking for a therapist, right, most insurance cards, when you get your insurance card, on the back, they'll have a member services number. Call that member services number and say, hey, I'm looking for a therapist. Can you help link me to some providers in my area? I do that even for like dentistry, for like getting my eyes checked and that kind of stuff. I always check. And then behavioral health, probably I could just call that number right there and say, hey, I'm looking for behavioral health services. So yeah, call the numbers on the back of the card. Also, don't sleep on support groups. The National Alliance on Mental Illness does free support groups for people living with mental illness and their families. And I was really reluctant to do support groups for a while. I won't even lie, because like it's one thing to be in a private room with a therapist talking about your issues, quite another to be doing that like with a bunch of other people who are strangers. But the NAMI Connections groups were so eye-opening for me because it helped me see that there were so many people just like me trying to figure it out. And that was comforting. And they gave me a lot of real world tangible advice on how to deal with certain things. So those are some of my tips on how to find a therapist. I hope that that helps you somehow. Again, I'm going to put it in the description, all of these resources and things like that, so you can use this. Hopefully, if this was useful to you, please share with a friend. And to my subscribers, you're like, girl, where you been? Girl, let me just tell you, I have felt uncertain about the future. You know, I'm about to graduate from grad school in 6 months, and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do the right thing? I have to start paying loans. Like, what am I even going to do? And it's producing a lot of anxiety, and I've just been in my head lately. And when I get in my head, it's just all my creative juices go. You know, like I'm like falling in love with YouTube and like figuring out how to edit and do all this stuff. But when I get in my head, it's just so hard for me to concentrate. That's why I haven't posted a vlog in the last 2 weeks. So, but I'm back, y'all. I'm back and pushing through it. Actually just finished this 21-day challenge with a mindset coach called Values to Vision. And it gave me a lot of really cool ideas about how to take the values I have in like the things that I believe for myself, the things I want for myself, and how to put them into actionable goals. So one of my goals is to be more consistent on YouTube, give you all valuable, consistent content, to get creative and all of that kind of stuff. So if you like this blog about how to find a therapist and you want more mental health tips, things I've learned being a peer, please let us know. Comment below, and or let me know what you would like to see, and I'll work on getting that to you. All right, friends, as we say here at Good Girl Chronicles, I love you. I love God more. See you next time.